I never imagined that the children I had spent my entire life loving would one day leave me in a nursing home. The day they drove me there, they smiled and told me it was for my own good. They said I would have doctors nearby, friendly people to talk to, and everything I needed. I smiled back because I didn't want them to feel guilty, but deep inside my heart was breaking. My name is Robert. I am 72 years old, and I spent 45 years building a successful construction company from nothing. Every dollar I earned came from hard work, sleepless nights, and sacrifices for my family. After my wife Linda passed away 5 years earlier, my two children, Jason and Melissa, became my entire world. I believed we were a close family. I trusted them with everything. I never imagined that money would slowly change the people I loved the most. After retiring, I handed my company over to Jason because I believed he was ready to continue what I had built. Melissa had her own successful career, and I helped her buy her first home years earlier. I thought I had done my duty as a father. I had no idea that my greatest heartbreak was still waiting for me. One evening, Jason and Melissa came to my house together. They looked unusually serious. Jason gently said, "Dad, living alone isn't safe anymore. We worry about you every day." Melissa quickly agreed and showed me pictures of a beautiful nursing home with gardens, private rooms, and friendly staff. They promised they would visit every weekend. I didn't want to leave the home where I had spent 40 years with my wife, but I also didn't want to become a burden to my children. So I quietly packed a small suitcase with my clothes, family photographs, and Linda's wedding ring, which I had kept ever since she passed away. As Jason drove me to the nursing home, I looked out of the car window at the neighborhood where my children had grown up. Every street held a memory. Every corner reminded me of a happier time. When we arrived, the staff welcomed me warmly, but I noticed something strange. Jason and Melissa seemed more interested in discussing paperwork than spending time with me. After helping me settle into my room, they hugged me, promised to return soon, and quickly left. I stood by the window and watched their car disappear down the road. They didn't know one important truth. 20 years earlier, I had quietly purchased the entire nursing home building as a long-term investment. I had never told anyone, not even my own children. And very soon, that secret was going to change all of our lives. The first few days at the nursing home were harder than I expected. I smiled whenever the nurses spoke to me, but every night I quietly missed my old home and the life I had shared with my wife. The staff treated me with kindness, and I soon became friends with several residents. Many of them had stories that sounded painfully familiar. Some had children who rarely visited. Others had been forgotten completely. Listening to them made me realize I was not alone. Every Saturday I sat near the front entrance, hoping Jason and Melissa would keep their promise. The first weekend, they didn't come. They called and said they were too busy. The second weekend, they sent flowers instead of visiting. By the third weekend, there wasn't even a phone call. I never complained because I didn't want to believe my own children were slowly forgetting me. Instead, I spent my time talking with the residents, playing chess with an elderly veteran named Henry, and helping the staff organize activities. Even in my sadness, I tried to make someone else's day a little brighter. One afternoon, while walking through the hallway, I overheard Jason and Melissa talking with the nursing home's administrator outside his office. They didn't realize I was standing nearby. Jason quietly asked, "How much longer do you think Dad will stay here? We need to sell his house before he changes his mind." Melissa replied, "The real estate market is perfect right now. Once the house is sold, we'll finally have access to the money." Their words hit me harder than anything I had ever heard. They hadn't brought me here because they were worried about my health. They wanted me out of the house so they could sell it and enjoy the inheritance before I was even gone. I walked back to my room without saying a word. That night, I opened the small folder I kept locked inside my suitcase. It contained the original ownership documents of the entire nursing home building and several other investments that no one in my family knew about. For years, I had kept those documents private because I believed wealth should never change a family. Sadly, my children had already allowed money to change them. As I looked at the papers, I quietly made a decision. I wasn't going to respond with anger or revenge. I was going to teach them a lesson they would never forget. The next morning, I asked the administrator if we could have a private meeting. He welcomed me into his office with a warm smile. As soon as the door closed, I placed the ownership documents on his desk. His eyes widened as he carefully looked through them. Then he stood up and respectfully said, "Mr. Robert, I had no idea you were the owner of this entire property." I smiled and told him I had quietly purchased the building 20 years earlier as an investment for my family's future. I explained that I had never wanted anyone to treat me differently because of my wealth. The administrator apologized and assured me that my privacy would always be respected. Then I shared everything I had overheard about my children planning to sell my house. He listened quietly before saying, "I'm truly sorry, Mr. Robert. You deserve much better than this." I thanked him and told him I had already decided what to do. It was time for my children to understand that love should never be measured by money. A week later, I invited Jason and Melissa to the nursing home, telling them I wanted to discuss my future. They arrived looking unusually cheerful. They believed I was finally ready to sign over the house and the rest of my assets. We all sat together in the conference room. A few moments later, the administrator walked in, carrying several legal documents. Jason smiled confidently, thinking everything was going according to his plan. Then the administrator looked at both of them and respectfully said, "Before we begin, there is something you should know. Mr. Robert is not just a resident here. He is the owner of this nursing home." The room fell completely silent. Jason's smile disappeared instantly, and Melissa stared at me in complete shock. Neither of them could believe what they had just heard. Before either of them could speak, I calmly looked into their eyes and said, "You brought me here because you thought I was alone and helpless. The truth is, I was never a burden. The only thing that became poor in this family was your values." Neither of them could lift their heads. For the first time in their lives, they realized that greed had cost them something far more valuable than money, the trust of their own father. I looked at Jason and Melissa for a long moment before speaking again. I told them I had spent my entire life working to give them opportunities I never had. I paid for their education, helped them buy their first homes, and built a business they could proudly inherit one day. I never expected anything in return except love, honesty, and a little time together. Instead, they saw me as an obstacle standing between them and my money. I reached into my briefcase and placed another folder on the table. It was my updated will. I calmly explained that several months earlier, I had decided to donate a large portion of my wealth to improve the nursing home, create a fund for elderly residents who could not afford proper care, and establish scholarships in my late wife Linda's name. My children would still receive a fair inheritance, but only after they had shown through their actions, not their words, that family meant more to them than money. Jason immediately burst into tears. Melissa covered her face and quietly admitted, "Dad, we were selfish. We thought we still had plenty of time to make things right. We never realized how badly we had hurt you." For the first time, I believe their tears came from genuine regret instead of fear of losing an inheritance. Over the following year, Jason and Melissa slowly began earning back my trust. They visited every weekend without missing a single one. Sometimes they brought dinner, sometimes we simply sat together talking for hours about old family memories. They stopped asking about my money completely. Instead, they asked how I was feeling, whether I needed anything, and if I wanted to spend holidays together again. Watching them change reminded me that people can lose their way, but they can also find it again if they are willing to face the consequences of their mistakes. Before I passed away several years later, I walked through the nursing home one final time. The building had become more than an investment. It had become a home for hundreds of elderly people who deserved dignity, respect, and kindness. My children stood beside me, no longer thinking about inheritance, but appreciating the time we still had together. Looking back, I realized the greatest gift I left them was never the buildings, the company, or the money. It was the lesson that love cannot be inherited. It must be earned every single day. My children almost lost their father because of greed, but they found him again through humility, forgiveness, and genuine love. In the end, That was worth far more than any fortune I could have ever left behind. Lesson: never measure your parents by the value of their wealth. Their greatest gift is the love and sacrifices they made long before you ever thought about an inheritance.